Welcome back to my channel. This video is one I originally put up on YouTube back in 2023. I need to point that out first because there are references to people's ages or other time-related items, so just adjust the times given by about 19 months. The purpose of this video is to show how people will say lots of things that don't hold up to examination or which will contradict what they said before. Of course, a lot of my videos cover such things, but this one involves totally different people. So let's get to it. There was a series of videos where 3 Dumaguete vloggers were involved in a fight. At first it sounded like a bunch of gossiping, and there is some of that, but the more I dug through the videos, the more I noticed a trend. This mostly involved Paul Cardwell from World Zoom, henceforth I'll just call him Cardwell, and Mark Thornton from Every Man Has a Story. To a lesser degree, we have Mike from Mike's Philippine Retirement. Ultimately, the problem comes from the fact that Cardwell was doing a lot of interviews and no one knew he had a serious criminal past where he defrauded 2 hospitals of $1.7 million over a decade ago while serving as their CEO. I can understand anyone not wanting to keep announcing such a past. I can understand vloggers feeling they were taken advantage of too. After all, I've seen people attack these vloggers because they interviewed Cardwell. So the vloggers suffered themselves, even though they did nothing wrong. But I have a serious problem with things Cardwell is saying beyond his understandably not wanting to keep revealing his past so he could just move on. Mike posted a video on his channel showing he was upset when Cardwell was criticizing large age gap relationships. Mike felt Cardwell may have been referring to his relationship and said if he wasn't, then Cardwell should have given names to make that clear.
Now, maybe World Zoom wasn't talking about me today. Maybe this other guy in Kansas City wasn't talking about me, but I think they were. If you're going to talk about somebody and you're going to say what a bad person they are, or you don't understand their age gap relationship, or you're going to call them broke, or you're going to call them somebody who doesn't have any money or doesn't have any morals, use their name.
It does seem to me that Cardwell was not talking about Mike's relationship. After all, Cardwell did say a big age gap was okay if the Filipino was at least 30. Mike's wife is 32. But Cardwell created the problem when he also was clearly attacking Mark Thornton's relationship. His wife is 28. Sure, that's under 30, but Cardwell kept referring to it as much lower. If Cardwell was lowering the age of Mark's wife, certainly Mike had reason to think he may be included too. Let's look at what Cardwell said about Mark.
We all know a YouTuber that probably pushes the boundaries of this type of thing more than anyone else. His wife is 22 years old, but I asked myself in the case of this YouTuber, I mean, the guy virtually has no money. He gets $900 a month, in Social Security. He has his YouTube income, but his channel is failing pretty rapidly. At this point, he just sits there all day and just waits people to come in a coffee shop and then he pounces on them. But what does he bring to a young Filipina? Has he promised her wealth and that he's going to leave something for her when he passes away?
He says the guy's wife is 22, which is our first problem since she's really 28. Then Cardwell does the gossipy stuff about how Mark has little money. The references to sitting in a coffee shop doing interviews is what lets us know he is talking about Mark because he has repeatedly criticized him about that elsewhere. I'm also disturbed by the comments about what Mark may have promised his wife. Frankly, it is none of his business, and it is unlikely Cardwell knows. As such, he shouldn't be talking about it. Cardwell does some more gossipy stuff here.
And then came on his last gas with $600 to the Philippines, and then captured a 20-year-old Filipino, 40+ year age difference. And what has he promised her? Because he can't even take care of himself.
Now Mark's wife is said to only be a 20-year-old, and more gossipy stuff about Mark not being able to take care of himself. Let's look at Mark's rebuttal, and we quickly see that Cardwell got other stuff wrong.
Who has had the audacity to attack my wife, to attack a Filipina. He claims that she's 22 years old, a child bride. My wife is almost 29. She's been to university. She speaks fluent English. She has her own YouTube channel. She's had full-time jobs before. She has supported her family. Worked 6 days a week, and all the money she made, she gave to her family. And you're insulting her, saying that she's not smart enough to make her own decision.
Later, Cardwell said he wasn't attacking her, but I'm sorry, you can't talk about a woman being too immature to make a decision about a relationship when she is that old and think she isn't going to feel attacked. Here is another response to Cardwell's gossipy type statements.
And says I'm destitute. Does it look like I'm destitute? I live in a mansion on the beach.
I think I heard Mark's living at a place owned by someone he knows, so it may be a special deal and doesn't tell us his true financial situation. But the fact is, it's a private matter others should keep out of rather than assuming things, especially when they get the most basic facts about ages wrong. Let's move on to the more problematic stuff. While it is understandable for Cardwell to try to keep his past secret, or at least minimize how bad it was, I think his comments are making it worse. For example, Cardwell had done an interview on the Paul Old Dog New Tricks channel. In that interview, Cardwell talked about being in a Thailand prison for 3 weeks. He said it was because of negative things he said about the government after a coup, but there is a good reason to not believe him. Why? Because being arrested in the U.S. for defrauding those hospitals, he broke his bond by going to Thailand. Cardwell had to turn in his passport after his initial arrest in the U.S., but tried to get another under his birth name. That failed, so he then took someone else's name and escaped to Thailand. Eventually, he was found and arrested by the Thai police and put in their jail. Near as I can tell from news reports, he was there for pretty much 3 weeks before brought back to the U.S. That's a heck of a coincidence. Let's look at how Mark compared what Cardwell said to the facts of his being arrested there for the fraud committed in the U.S.
He went on Paul Old Dog New Tricks channel not too long ago and told this incredible story about how he had been wrongly arrested in Thailand during a coup because he supported the king. The real story? In 2013, he's arrested and charged with fraud and theft from 2 hospitals, one in Wyoming, one in Indiana. He stole millions of dollars from hospitals. This is money that would have gone to take care of sick children. So the judge lets him out on $50,000 unsecured bond. So what's the first thing he does? He goes and tries to get another passport in his real name. So what does he do? He steals his own brother's passport.
Is Mark telling the truth about Cardwell? Well, there are newspaper accounts from that time period that support Mark, like this one. There are some minor differences, such as Mark saying Cardwell used his brother's passport and the news article saying it was his brother-in-law's passport, but such differences aren't really important to the main issues. In this screenshot from a newspaper, we have Cardwell saying he left to arrange for a child he fathered with a Thai woman to be brought back to the U.S., but the article says when arrested, he was living with a different Thai woman. We have a bit more from Mark about Cardwell being in a Thailand jail and why.
Because the FBI, they heard where he was. They sent somebody out there to check to observe him, confirmed that it was him, had the Thai police arrest him, and he went to prison in Thailand.
So, we have 2 possibilities. One would be that he was arrested 2 different times in Thailand for different things and put in jail in both cases for the same length of time. The other is that Cardwell was worried that someone would find out he had spent time in a Thailand jail after he fled the U.S., and it just sounded better if he could make it about something other than the fraud case. Next, we have other claims Cardwell made about Mark Thornton that I haven't found any backup for and sound pretty gossipy in many cases. At one time, Cardwell praised Mark's interviews and listed him as having one of his favorite channels, but now says how terrible they are. Such a big change doesn't sound like someone is giving their true opinion.
His show is just awful. I mean, there's no entertainment value.
We have more examples. Cardwell claimed Mark came to the Philippines using his last $600. I did find a place in one of Mark's videos that said his plane ticket cost $600, but that doesn't make it his last $600. In fact, Mark also said he had $2,000 in the bank at that time. Mark does admit he didn't have much, but that doesn't matter. Let's watch.
This guy crawled into the Philippines taking his family's last $600 and left his two small children with all the debts, where the family had to file bankruptcy, after he arrived in the Philippines.
More critical, Cardwell said Mark left his wife bankrupt and abandoned his small children. But it seems Mark had been divorced from his wife for a long time, and she lived in England with the kids, who did visit every year. And in 2020, when Mark came to the Philippines, he said his oldest daughter was in her last year of college. That's not exactly a small child. I haven't seen anything about his wife being bankrupt. Maybe she was, maybe she wasn't. But such a claim requires proof to back it up.
He's attacked me 7 different times, 4 videos, 3 live streams. In the meantime, he's getting big views, 50, 60,000 views.
Cardwell claimed Mark did 4 videos and 3 live streams attacking him. I haven't found that many, though it is always possible, especially in live streams, that it is only some portion buried deep inside, so I missed it. However, Cardwell also said they were getting 50 to 60,000 views each. I checked. The most views the videos got on any subject during this period was 48,000. Most videos are much lower. Cardwell can't be referring to the live streams being that high because in the last year, the most viewed stream on any subject is only 12,000. So why is Cardwell greatly exaggerating the numbers? Why all the gossipy attacks? Why the flat-out inaccurate comments? My hunch is that when Mark found out about Cardwell's criminal past, he felt used. But then I can understand Cardwell not wanting to constantly qualify everything he says with, "By the way, I'm a felon." I think he is right when he says most people who are complaining that he didn't tell people right away wouldn't admit such a thing themselves either. So Mark is mad and responds by calling Cardwell a liar and doing a video where he goes over many of the lies he claims Cardwell has made. I think that probably explains Cardwell's retaliation and why he went from saying Mark did good interviews to suddenly saying they are terrible. It's almost like a wife who suddenly wants a divorce and starts complaining about things her husband does that never bothered her before. It's just looking for trouble. For the record, Mark has said he still doesn't have a lot of money, but nothing to clearly show how much he does have now. He did say when he came to the Philippines he had Social Security, and he made $20 to $30 a day teaching English online. No idea how many days he taught or if he still does, but if it was 5 days, that would be $100 to $150 a week, or at least $400 to $600 a month. Not a lot of money, but on top of Social Security, it can be just fine in the Philippines. And he has a successful channel bringing in more money. Then we have the problem of what I call weasel words. For example, Cardwell says he wasn't charged with taking the passport from a family member to escape to Thailand, even though Mark said he did that. But elsewhere in his own video, Cardwell talks about being guilty of other felonies, but having them dropped as part of a plea bargain. So he can't use the excuse that he wasn't charged with something to mean he didn't do it. He admits some charges were dropped. It may or may not have included that one. In any case, as shown in the newspaper articles, he did steal a passport. Mark also claimed Cardwell got most of his sentence reduced because he ratted out a cellmate. So let's look at that.
So what does he do next? Does he pay his debt to society? What does he do? Well, he makes friends with his cellmate, pretends like he's his friend, listens to him confide in him. And this cellmate tells him about a crime that he committed that he didn't get arrested for. So Paul, what does he do? He rats him out.
Now look at how Cardwell tries to get out of that one.
Oh, I've seen some of these nasty comments that said, oh, he must have ratted somebody out to get that reduced sentence. Come on, this isn't the movies. That doesn't. Where would I have been as a hospital CEO where I would have been involved in something that would be of value to the federal government that they would say, okay, we're going to take away 80% of a sentence? Now, you know that's nonsense. People can say what they want. That did not occur, obviously did not occur.
Cardwell's excuse for saying it isn't true involved more weasel words. That is, as a hospital administrator, how would he have come in contact with other criminals he could rat out? Let me make a guess how it would have happened. How about during the time he was in jail? It doesn't matter who he came in contact with while a hospital administrator, does it? It only matters that he was in a cell with someone else after being a hospital administrator. It gets worse for Cardwell, because not only is he using weasel words, which creates suspicion, but as it happens, we have news reports that specifically say he testified against a cellmate. The article clearly states that Cardwell testified against a man who he shared a cell with. So Mark is correct about that part. But was it the reason for Cardwell's reduced sentence? I don't know for sure, but here is another clip from the same article that certainly gives Mark's statement some credence. This article on Stream clearly states that Cardwell could receive a reduction in his sentence for providing assistance to the government in the prosecution of others. Whether that happened, we don't know, but we do know he did, in fact, testify against his cellmate, and we know that that can result in reducing his own sentence, and we know his sentence was reduced. We just can't be sure if they are all connected. Finally, Cardwell tried to contrast the interviews he's had with the Filipina P with the lack of her doing interviews with these other channels, trying to make it sound like P knows about them in a negative way.
Look at the Filipina P. She will not be on a channel of any one of those guys, and she won't allow them on her channel. I was on 4 times, right? But she wouldn't begin to allow those people on her channel, and and she's not going to go on theirs. Why? Because she knows, she sees it.
Sorry, but that doesn't hold up. P doesn't do interviews on her channel about any other channel. The 3 interviews she did do with other vloggers were within the first 2 weeks of starting her own channel. She was invited on their channels, which was smart to get off to a good start. But she really doesn't want to do that, and so she never did again. When she has someone on her channel who happens to have a channel of their own, she'll give them a plug as a basic courtesy, but her interviews are not about those other channels. Cardwell had healthcare knowledge, thus the interviews. And that's the only reason he got a chance to mention he had a channel himself. It is no reflection on other channels at all. After all these examples, does this show Cardwell is just an evil person? Frankly, I don't know. We've all seen politicians get caught doing something wrong, do all they can to deny it, but then they get in far more trouble for the denial. Yet we can understand the desire of a person who did wrong in the past to want to try to hide it now and move on with their lives. I can't judge him on that big picture, but the fact is, these things I've shown Cardwell saying are not helping him. At the very least, he should stop attacking others the way I have shown him doing. I have nothing against legitimate attacks, but his are lacking proof, and many just sound like gossip. Thanks for watching, and don't let the trolls stop you from speaking out.